Imagine it's 11:47 p.m. The dishes are done, the kids are finally asleep, the homework is signed, the lunches are packed, the permission slip is found miraculously under a stack of unopened mail, and she sits down, just for a second, and instead of feeling relief, she feels nothing, or worse, everything at once, a kind of hollow exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. And if you asked her how she's doing tomorrow morning, she'd smile and say, "I'm fine, just tired." That's where this conversation starts, because just tired doesn't begin to cover it. We talk a lot about single motherhood in this culture. We celebrate it on Mother's Day. We put it in movies, usually as a backstory, a struggle that gets resolved by the third act. But what we almost never talk about is what's happening inside, the psychological weight that doesn't show up on her face, doesn't make it into the conversation at school pickup, and certainly doesn't trend on social media. Today, we're going to talk about that invisible layer, and I promise you, whether you're a single mother, you love one, or you've never thought about this before, by the end of this, something is going to shift in how you see it. Let's start with something your brain does that it never asks your permission for. Psychologists call it hypervigilance, and it was originally studied in trauma survivors and soldiers returning from war. It's that state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for threats, never fully powering down, always on low-level alert. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Many single mothers live in a version of this every single day, not because something catastrophic happened, but because something very real is always at stake. She is the only net. If she misses something, a fever, a bill, a change in her child's mood, there's no second person to catch it. The brain, being the spectacular survival machine that it is, responds to that reality by never fully switching off. Neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett has done extensive work on how the brain is essentially a prediction machine, constantly anticipating what's coming next to conserve energy and stay safe. For a single mother, the list of things to predict and prepare for is so long and the margin for error so thin that the brain essentially runs a background program at all times. You can't see it from the outside. She looks calm, she looks capable, but underneath, her nervous system is running like a server farm, processing, processing, processing. And here's where it gets psychologically fascinating and a little heartbreaking. That constant state of readiness, it costs something. Neuroscience tells us that prolonged activation of the stress response, cortisol, adrenaline, the whole cocktail, takes a measurable toll on memory, emotional regulation, and even physical health over time. The exhaustion she feels isn't laziness, it isn't weakness. It's what happens when a human being runs on overdrive for months, sometimes years, without a co-pilot to take the wheel for even an hour. Now, I want to talk about something called decision fatigue, because this one is almost comically underappreciated. In 1998, researchers Baumeister and colleagues published a landmark study showing that the human capacity to make decisions is finite. Every choice, big or small, draws from the same mental reservoir, and when that reservoir runs dry, the quality of your decisions deteriorates. Judges give harsher sentences later in the day. Shoppers make worse financial choices after long sessions. The brain, when depleted, defaults to the easiest or most impulsive option. Now imagine being the sole decision maker for an entire household. What's for dinner? What does this rash mean? Is it the doctor or wait and see? Can we afford the school trip? Is this friendship group good for my kid? Should I push back on this teacher or let it go? These decisions don't come one at a time. They come in avalanches, often simultaneously, often while someone is literally pulling on her sleeve. Single mothers aren't making one or two of these calls a day. Research on household cognitive load suggests the number of daily micro-decisions in running a home with children can exceed 200 for one person, with no one to bounce it off of. And yet, to the outside world, she seems fine. She seems on top of it, because she is. But the psychological cost of that is something she carries alone.
quietly, usually without naming it. Let's talk about loneliness for a moment, because this is the one that tends to surprise people the most. How can someone be so surrounded by children, by school events, by coworkers, by noise, and still feel profoundly alone? This is where psychology draws a really important distinction between social contact and emotional intimacy. You can be in a room full of people and be deeply lonely if none of those interactions involve genuine vulnerability, reciprocity, or the feeling of being truly known. Many single mothers describe a particular kind of loneliness that doesn't come from having no one around. It comes from being the one everyone else leans on while having nowhere to lean themselves. The children need her to be steady. The workplace needs her to be professional. Her friends, often coupled up and navigating their own exhaustion, may not fully grasp the specific weight she's carrying. So she becomes fluent in a kind of emotional self-containment. She learns to compress her own needs into the margins. She gets very, very good at being fine. Psychologist Brené Brown's research on vulnerability and belonging is instructive here. Brown found that genuine connection requires the courage to be seen, including in our struggles. But for a single mother, showing vulnerability often feels like a luxury she can't afford. Who's going to hold things together if she falls apart? The armor she wears isn't vanity, it's infrastructure. There's also something worth naming that rarely gets named: grief. Not the grief of death necessarily, but what therapists sometimes call ambiguous loss. The mourning of a life that looked different in your imagination, the partner who would have been there, the shared Sunday mornings, the someone who would notice when she's overwhelmed without her having to announce it. This grief doesn't have a ceremony. There's no card for it. And because it's not recognized by the world around her, she often doesn't give herself permission to feel it either. She keeps moving, because moving is how you survive. But unfelt grief has a way of settling into the body, into short fuses and sudden tears in the car, and a bone tiredness that a full night's sleep doesn't touch.
Here's what I find remarkable, though, and I say this not to romanticize struggle, but because the psychology genuinely supports it. What single mothers often develop over time is something researchers studying resilience call post-traumatic growth. It's the counterintuitive phenomenon where navigating profound difficulty actually expands a person's psychological capacity. Their empathy, their clarity about what matters, their ability to tolerate uncertainty and still function. Studies by psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun found that people who face and integrate significant adversity often report a deeper sense of meaning, stronger relationships, and a more nuanced understanding of themselves than they had before. Single mothers, by necessity, become extraordinarily skilled at prioritization. They learn the difference between urgent and important faster than almost anyone. They develop an emotional intelligence that is forged in the day-to-day reality of being someone's entire world. They become, quietly and without fanfare, some of the most psychologically capable people in any room. But here's the thing, and this is what I really want you to sit with. Capability shouldn't require invisibility. Strength shouldn't mean you never get to put it down. If you're a single mother watching this, I want you to hear something that maybe nobody has said out loud recently. The things you're carrying are real. The exhaustion isn't a character flaw. The loneliness makes complete sense. The grief is valid. And the fact that you're still showing up, imperfectly, magnificently, every single day is not nothing. It's actually extraordinary. And you are allowed to know that without immediately pivoting to everything you still haven't done. And if you love a single mother, or work with one, or live next door to one, the most powerful thing you can offer isn't advice, it's witness. It's saying, I see what you're doing, and it's a lot. Because so much of what she carries feels heavier when she feels like no one sees it. We live in a culture that's quick to celebrate the highlight reel and slow to honor the quiet, grinding, unglamorous work of holding a life together. This video is a small act of naming what usually goes unnamed. If any part of this resonated with you, I'd genuinely love to know in the comments, whether you're living this, loving someone who is, or just seeing it differently now. And if you think someone needs to hear this today, share it. Sometimes the most healing thing is just knowing you're not invisible.